To my channel. My name is Reena, and today I will be sharing with you some of the practice tests for Python beginners. This video is helpful for those who are just starting out on Python and want to do some practical examples to learn Python more in depth. Or if you are someone who is looking to learn a new skill, then this video can also be very helpful to you. So in this video, these are the practice tests that I will be going through with you along with their solutions. So this is the practice test 1, 2, and 3. Let's get started. I will now go to my terminal on my Mac machine. I am in Py313, which is the folder where my Python virtual machine is located. Let's start our Python virtual machine with source being activated. As we can see here, the virtual machine is now started. The Python version that I'm using is Python 3.13. Now we will start Jupyter Notebook. Okay, this has started. And now we will copy this test over here. I changed the type of the cell because this is not a coding block. So this is just something that I'm using so that we can refer to it. Let's go through the question together. First is given the string of comma separated characters, create three new variables containing the Unicode point in hexadecimal. So this is the string with comma separated characters, and we have to create a list of equivalent hexadecimal codes for this particular string. And after that, we also have to convert this particular string into uppercase and lowercase letters for each character. So if you don't know already, this is a Unicode string. So each Unicode character has an uppercase and a lowercase equivalent. So we will be creating three lists. One will be hexadecimal, one will be uppercase, and the other one will be lowercase. This we will be, in this particular example, we will be using string functions. So this can be very helpful to you. Let's insert a new cell. Okay, so first we know our starting point is s equals to this string, and we will print the original string as it is. So this is the string. Now I want the hexadecimal for it. So I will write hex underscore list. Now, one thing to understand over here is that this is a list format. S is not a list. So if we check type of S, it is a string. So first we need to convert S into a list. So how can we do this? So we will be doing char underscore list equals to S dot split. And we want to split this string with comma because we want comma separated characters. So S dot split, and now I will print character list. So we have the list over here. As you can see, in each of the indexes, there is some space that is unnecessary. It came from the original string. So we need to strip out this space. So how can we do this? I will use the very same line where we split the initial string, and I will turn it into a comprehension. So we want this as a list. So this will be square bracket for value in s dot split and list over. For value in s dot split, what do we want? We want value to be stripped. Okay, and let's check now. We can see over here our output got updated. Now we no longer have spaces and we have a list over here. Okay, so this is our normal starting point. Now the first exercise is to convert it into hexadecimal. So I will create another list, hex list equals to, again, square bracket because we want a list. And over here, we will type comprehension again for value in char list. This time I will use this particular list and not s because this is a string and we want to work with a list. So for value in char list, right? So each time it will be pi and then this Unicode, this, and this. For value in char list, what do we want? We want value to be hexadecimal. So in order to convert a string into hexadecimal, we first need an integer equivalent of it. Um, every character in the ASCII is that they do have an integer equivalent. So for example, if I have character A, then its equivalent is I think 65, and then small character A is something around 96, if I remember correctly. So each character has an integer unique value. So how do we get that? So I will use ORD function, which will give me the integer value of this particular values, each character. Okay. So then once I get the integer value of it, I convert it into hex, which is the hexadecimal equivalent of it. Okay. So now we print our hex list, and as you can see, we have equivalent hexadecimal values. If you want to check what is the output of ORD, you can always do something like, let's say, get a list of 0. You can see it basically gives an integer number. And then if I convert this integer into hex, we get the same output that we have over here. Okay, so this part is done. Next is to convert it into lowercase letters. Okay, so we will create another list saying lower list. And again, because it is a list, we will start with a square bracket. Okay, square bracket, and inside this, I will write comprehension for value in. And my starting point is character list again for value in character list. So it will loop through each value in this particular list. Okay. So first value, second value, third value, so on and so forth. For value in character list, what do I want? I want value to be in lowercase. Okay, that's it. And then I print lower underscore list. Let's make it a little pretty. I want it to be the output to make sense. Okay, so we will write f print statements, and I will write over here hexadecimal list equals, then curly braces and over, right? Same thing over here, f lowercase list equals curly braces and single quote over. Okay, so this makes it more clear. I can add something over here as well. This will be our character list, right? Okay, I don't need to print this one. So now we have our original character list. We have the hexadecimal, and over here you can see the lowercase value. So the original had uppercase pi, and in the lowercase list we have lowercase pi. This was already in lowercase. So all of these values are now in lowercase, okay? All these three are in lowercase. Now we want the uppercase of it. So similar thing we will do over here for upper list equals to, I'll just copy paste this, right? And instead of value dot lower, we will be doing what? Value dot upper, right? And I will print this list again with uppercase, okay? And the value will change to upper list. So as we can see here, the equivalent of pi, this was already uppercase, so it is in uppercase over here. The equivalent of this letter is this one. Equivalent of this is this, no change there. This is this, and for this one, it's this. Okay, so now let's go to the second test, which is to check odd even number with an input field. So over here, first I will save this particular notebook. I will title it as practice test 1, right? And I will add a new cell over here. Oh, I accidentally duplicated it. Let's add a new cell at the bottom and change its type to markdown so that we can type the question over here. Okay, now I will add another cell and this will be of type code. So what does it say? Check odd even number with input field. So we need to take an input field from the user and check whether that number is an odd string or an even string. Okay, so let's do input equals to, let's say number 1 equals to input, enter number to determine whether odd or even. Okay, now we will just do over here print number 1 for now, right? Fine. What is it? Let's fix the variable name. Okay, so it is taking the number. Now I will check quickly what is the type of this input. So as we can see, all input strings, all input values are of type string. And in order to check whether it's odd or even, I need to divide it by 2 and check the modulus value. So I cannot divide a string, right? So that is why we will change the type of the string. So I will keep this as is over here and I will change it to int, type int. Okay, so we are typecasting whatever value user enters into an integer form. Okay, now we enter over here. As we can see, we got a 4. You can take this a step further, but because this is a beginner level exercise, I'm not making any complex things over here. But you can take this a step further by saying that, if input uh, is something that is, a string, then let's try this. So as you can, okay, so over here, something important to understand. We cannot accept value error. Why? Because by default, the input value returns a string, right? And so we will remove this. And over here, we will just typecast it. Let's see what happens. Invalid literal for int, right? So input does not throw an error when a string is entered because the input return type for this function is string. That is why when when we typecast it, integer basically expects a numeric value, and that is why it will throw you an error. So over here, we will now add again, and let's see what the output is. Okay. So again, error caught, invalid literal with base 10 AFS. right? It is because integer expects a numeric value. So when you enter a string, it will throw an exception, so we catch it over here, right? Now, moving on to the first part, check odd or even with an input field. We have the number now, and it is an integer number. So what do we check? We check that print, let's do an f string, number underscore one is, and then what do we do? Uh, Odd. Basically, what I want is odd if, right? Number mod 2 double equals to or not equals to 0, else even. Okay, and then we add the f string, and let's check for there's some error. What does it say? Okay, let's fix the variable name. 3 is odd. Okay, now we do, let's say 6. 6 is even. So what did we do over here? So we took the input value from the customer and typecasted it into an integer value and stored it in a variable called number1, right? And then over here I print number1, which is the value that was entered by user, and we typecasted into integer. So number1, which is the value 6, is, it should be odd if 6 modulus 2 is not 0. So when I add modulus is basically it gives you the remainder of the function. So 6 modulus 2, it will be 0. Okay, 6 divided by 2, 6 is a direct multiple of 2. So 6 divided by 2 is 3, and 6 modulus 2 is 0. So it will print else even. Let's run it again, and I do 3, and it will say 3 modulus 2, it's not 0, right? So it will print out. Okay, so this is our second test case. Now let's go to the third one, which is this. Let's paste it over here and make the cell as markdown. And let's go through it. You are given two variables, A and B, with non-zero, and you need to generate a string that reads something like this: A divided by B equals to result. Add, try, except, finally, else blocks as needed. Okay, so let's add a new cell, and we will take two inputs. But first, I will define a function over here that perform definition, perform division. Okay, so this is my function name. We are basically defining a function. What does my function do? I need to take two variables, A and B, right? So I will just add, I will give a nice name to my variables. So let's say first number equals to input, enter first number, right? Second number equals to input, enter second number, right? As we saw in earlier example, that input always makes the value a string. Over here, because we want to perform a division, we need to typecast it. So we can divide decimal point numbers as well. So instead of typecasting it into int like the previous example, this time I will be typecasting it into a float. Okay, so whatever value user enters, we will typecast it into float. As we saw above, that when you use int, it expects a numeric value, and if it is not a numeric value, it will throw an error. So over here, I will write a type try function, which will be similar for float. Okay, so try except value error as E. And over here, print exception can't E, this will be an F string, right? So if a user enters a non-numeric value over here, which is not valid, float will throw an exception and it will be caught over here, all right? So let's try this much first. Over here, we need a colon. I need to call my function perform division, okay? So first number, let's do a string and it will say exception caught, which is what we wrote over here. Exception caught could not convert string to float, okay? And what was the string? This one. So we can verify, okay, my try except block is working correctly. Now, let's do a normal number, 4.14, 2.34. See? So it ran fine. There was no printing of exception, meaning that the input values are working correctly. Now, we need to print this result, right? So we got two numbers, we need to divide it. So print, let's for ease just do it over here, value equals to a first number divided by second number, okay? And then we print over here, print f string. What do I want? First number divided by second number, right, equals value. If you don't want to do a separate variable over here, you can also just do like this. Or to avoid confusion, I added it into a value, but this is also perfectly valid. So value and the f string, right? And let's see now. I'll enter 4.14, 2.1. And as we can see, it prints a very long float value. Now, what do I want? I don't want this result doesn't look very nice, does it? Because there's so many decimal numbers over here. So I want to round this string in up to 4 decimal places. So what can I do now? In f string, where I have my result value, I will do a conversion up to 4 decimal places, 4 floating point places, okay? So now let's see 3.25 and you can see over here it will restrict up to 4 decimal places. All right, let's try a normal number 4, 2, and it will print to 4 decimal places still. Okay, so now I want these two also to be uniform, so it should be up to 4 decimal places always, right? So for that I will add 4f over here as well, colon dot 4f, right? Okay, so now if I add a very long string and another very long string, it will still do up to 4 decimal places. All right. So now we have this. It says add try except, which we did. Finally, else block as needed. Okay. So what I can do over here is that this only catches value error, meaning that if the float function accepts a string, it will throw an exception and that gets catched over here. But if there is a, let's say, zero division error or some other error during the division, that will not get caught over here. All right, let's see. Let's try over here to 0. So there is an error that gets printed, but it doesn't get caught, right? So what can we do over here? So we will take this particular block and put it in the else part, right? So if it is not a value error and float function ran fine, so means that we have valid numbers. So else I will go and divide my numbers, okay, and print everything. Finally, finally means that regardless of whether the exception happened or not, we print or we do some operations. So finally, let's say I want to delete the variables that I created, first number, del, second number, okay, and print, finally, blank, executed, okay. Let's do 2 and 0. What does it say? It should come in the else part. So over here we try again. Now this is nested, right? Except print F statement, exception caught during division, right? And let's print the exception, 2, 0. So exception caught during division, float division by 0, finally block executed. Okay, so despite the exception which got caught over here, the finally block got executed. So we have a nested try except here. Now let's do the correct examples. So let's do 4 and 2. So you can see here 4 divided by 2 is equal to 2, and finally block got executed. Okay, let's try another example, str, and over here it says exception caught could not convert string to float. Okay, yeah, this one is because the first number did not even get declared, so it cannot delete it. So let's do this, str, exception caught could not convert string to float, str, and finally block not executed. Okay, so this one is the this one, this except, right? And the one that we saw previously, which was divide by 0, it was this one. Okay, so this is the third exercise. That is all for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like, share, and subscribe. I will be creating more of these videos. And if you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to post it in comments and I will respond to you as soon as I can. Bye for now.